Hi everyone, I'm Todd Fisher, the host of the Cult Following podcast. Cult Following is a podcast that studies the personalities and common traits of cult leaders and their followers. Get the real story behind these infamous and oftentimes tragic cults from a new perspective through exhaustive research and from interviews with people that were there. Available anywhere you listen to podcasts.
Hey everybody, and welcome back to another episode of No Earthly Explanation with your host Donald Schmidt and myself, Brittany Barbieri. This is going to be one heck of a awesome show follow-up for you guys. This is following the archaeological dig that we got to do over in Roswell. So to follow that up, Don, how are you since the dig? What's been going on?
Still brushing off the dust. I mean, between all the prevailing wind and it was chilly, wasn't it? Especially that last day. We had, for this time of year, it should have been 20 degrees warmer, but nonetheless, I mean, we all, a group of very stalwart, as far as individuals, they stuck it out, and it was a good team of people, and I was very proud of everyone's involvement, and very pleased that everyone is asking, can we go back in a month or two? I mean, how soon can we resume where we left off? But
can't blame them. It was a good time.
It was historic, and that's the first time that we've actually ever worked what we call the impact site. Now, for all these years heretofore, we have worked what it was originally designated as the debris field, with the greatest chance of finding physical remnants, artifacts from the 1947 crash. The fact that that debris field covered an area of almost a mile long, and to hear so many eyewitness accounts describing that for years thereafter, pieces would wash up from the ground, from after heavy rains or some of the wind erosion. But we're going back there. Yes, we will return there. But this particular location is probably the most exciting location. And it's almost like it's beyond being at a battlefield, in a sense that this is where the remains of the craft, and more accurately described as a pod, an egg-shaped craft about the size of a small car, and the bodies, the crew, the remains, as well as one survivor. And the very thought that it all happened at this location that we worked for the first time. And as our guest will demonstrate, and she will certainly, as the expert that she is, that you typically do a walkover. You look for anything that looks intriguing, interesting, suggesting something out of the ordinary. It's not that you just go in and you start excavating willy-nilly with the thought that, oh my God, they're bones, or there's pieces of the ship, that type of thing. It doesn't work that way. But to say that even as a preliminary dig, that we work areas of potential entrapment, we found things that witnesses described, such as the black outgrowth of rock, which we were told did not exist in New Mexico, and yet there it is. And so we look forward to putting together a final scientific report that will go to my scientific director for their advisement and suggestions, and we shall return. We shall return. So with that, we should bring out our guest.
Yes, our wonderful and talented and amazing geologist, Miss Elley Ringo. How you doing? How have you been since the dig?
I'm doing grand. I too am actually shaking off dust. It's still in my suitcase.
No tarantulas or scorpions or anything, though.
No, nothing terribly dangerous. There was like some stickers and stuff, but no, just dust and the rocks that I brought home because it's an occupational hazard.
As you continue to build to your wonderful collection.
Oh yeah.
But Elley, you are quite the Renaissance person in that you are an actor, you are a singer, you're a stunt double. You have been in movies and you have TV shows that you're currently involved with, and I wouldn't say above all that, but you are a geologist. In fact, that's where, as far as presently on TV, that is your expertise. And that was the reason that we sought you out, and you were wonderful enough to join us in our last adventure. So we can't thank you enough.
All of those things are true. And thank you for inviting me. It was awesome and just a great experience. Some people have said you must get monotonous going out and just walking an area or looking at the same thing, or, you know, trying to find something unique, but it doesn't get old. It doesn't get boring, because you never know where it's going to take you, what you're going to find, what you'll see or discover. So going to a place I'd never been to before and been able to actually walk around was fantastic. So thank you so much for allowing me to go out there with everybody and just be part of the group.
And you are part of the group. I can guarantee that. And I especially appreciate when I had ran all that distance where the rest of you went with your cars. And then I ran ahead from that sinkhole just to make sure that the two-track, the trail, then continued on in the direction that the aerial photographs suggested. And as I'm standing there and your vehicle rushed right past me, I put it on. And then the next vehicle, with Professor Frank Kimbler, I was up on the rise and I'm waving them on, and I'm running down from the sinkhole thinking, okay, they'll pick me up. And it's like a scene from Trains, Planes, and Automobiles. John Candy and I can't think of the actor, but sitting there, stone-faced, staring straight ahead as I'm ready to grab the door, and they shoot past me. So it was a long run back to camp. But
only part of that's true.
At least, oh, what part isn't true?
You running up.
You ran up, and then we stopped. We said, "Hey, Dawn, do you need a ride?" And you're like, "Oh no, you guys are full. Keep going." But we're like, "Well, we could fit a whole body in the back of the trunk, so we could still take you." Like, no, we're good.
Because I knew that's where I'd wind up. I'd be in the trunk. So
it had air holes. You would have been able to breathe. No one would have died. You'd have been fine.
I would have probably been covered in dust by the time we did stop, but
fully.
Yeah, fully, yes. But then I would have been fully initiated. So
it was Frank's fault. Frank's the one that didn't see you or stop.
It was Frank's fault. It's always Frank's fault.
Me and Brett saw you. We waved.
I think that was like the best moment, though. It's like, okay, there's the rest of them, and we all get out, and we're like, oh, Don's not.
Where's Don?
Don's not with them, and Ben just stops and he's like, oh, well, that's not good. I mean, his just subtle line of, well, that's not good.
Yeah.
He's not with
Ben
you.
Hansen is going. So Ben Hansen is going, oh, that's not good.
Yeah, that's not. We lost the team leader. That's not good.
Yeah. You remember, and you recall how far we were from the camp.
Oh yeah.
We were like 6 miles away.
So five. I'll grant you that. And then by the time Britt finally calls, Don, where are you? Well, I was already back at camp, so it was that much longer before she finally, where's Don?
No, wait a minute. Frank called you first as soon as I said he's not with us. And he's not answering the phone.
I wouldn't pick up the Frank. You might pick up for Britt. I do not pick up the Frank.
Well, who knew?
Because he would have said, Don, can you bring us some waters or something? You just run, and
well, that I will have to say, Elley and Ben and I and John, I think we lost several people during this exploration over 2 days. We kept losing people.
Yeah, where's that person? Where's this person? It was great though. It was so much fun because you really like herded the tribe together, and then we made our own jokes. We were laughing so hard that our faces hurt. At least mine did. And
Yeah.
so it worked out well though, even though if we did lose a few people.
We found them by end of day. I think that's all that matters.
Oh yeah, they were back at the cars when they were supposed to. They're like, dinner's when?
Yeah,
okay, we'll be there.
Yeah, then everybody was there.
We were all together.
I'm glad you did try, or you made an effort to account for me. And I would hate to think you would have been back in Roswell before. Oh, where's Don? He's still running someplace. Yeah.
We would have checked the porter potty first. We would have made sure. We would have.
Yeah.
Oh man. So Elley, so what got you into, I mean, obviously you spent time becoming a geologist, and like at the end of the day, like what got you into like geology to begin with, when you're very talented as acting, you have beautiful modeling photos. I mean, you are more than a triple threat in that regard, right? So like what made you throughout your life just say, hey, you know what? I really want to go study rocks. I have friends that are geologists, and they have that passion for it. And each one has a different explanation of what drove them to it. Was it the energy? Was it the amazing nature of it, the value of it, the fun of it? I mean, everyone has a different story. So I want to know what your story is. Like, what got you into geology?
My beginning stories, I went to hunt for agates on the beach with my dad. There was some lady from church that showed my dad this pretty rock. And I was like 7, 8 years old. And I was like, oh, those are cool. Can we go find them? My dad's like, yeah, we can try. We didn't know what we were looking for at all. But I would want to go every Saturday. And so I would beg my dad to take me to the beach. And so we would comb through the rocks. And I used to take friends with me. And slowly the friends stopped coming because they'd go to the beach and think we were going to chase waves. And I'd let them chase waves. And then I'd go to a pile of rocks. And they're like, wow, you're boring. And so the friends just kind of left me alone. I didn't know at the time, like what it was, like what an agate was. I didn't know what geology was, nothing like that. There was no big science program in my school or anything. So the years went by, and I was working like at this yucky job at a bank, couldn't stand it. The woman that I worked for was just a nightmare. And I decided I was going to go look for opals in the Virgin Valley, Nevada. And I went up there, it was pouring, it was hailing, it was muddy, it was gross, and everybody was waiting in their cars. And I'm out there with my pick just hitting the side of the hill going, yes, and pulling stuff out. And it was so cool. I was like, I could do this. I could get dirty for the rest of my life. So I went home and I Googled how to look for rocks for a living, because I still didn't know what a geologist was. I wasn't sheltered. I just had no idea what the word was. And so it said, oh, you could be a geologist. I was like, oh, what's that? So then I looked it up, and I started kind of right away after that in college with way too many credits, and just like a huge love of, hey, I'm that nerd. I collect rocks. I don't know what they are, but I'm going to figure it out. So I was always fascinated by like road cuts and hills and canyons, and why the layers looked the way they do and why they were moved. And I knew nothing, and I wanted to find out what it was. So my cat sense of just full on curiosity took over, and I had to figure it out. And it's something that literally since I was a kid, I have my original agate collections that I had from when me and my dad collected rocks. And
Wow.
Yeah, it's a little insane, but yeah, I keep them in jars. They're all like color coordinated and stuff, but it was a blast. And I will still have my nose straight to the ground all the time, even when I'm out in the field. And I think that several people probably on this last little exploration was like, what is she doing? What's she looking for? I was having a blast. I was looking for petrified wood and jasper and stuff all over the ground. It was so much fun. But that's how I got started in, just the very, very beginning stages of what I'm doing.
That's really cool. I mean, that's a really cool like story, because anything that pertains to like, I love when it always comes back to an environment with family, that like you have these amazing memories that started it all, that started on that launch. But I think that's really cool. And again, like it's something that really, if it's intriguing to you and you love it, why not go after it?
Yeah.
So I think it's awesome. I think that's really cool. Now, through all of those experiences, did you ever like come across a really interesting stone that kind of stumped you, that you had to go back through like your books to be like, now, wait a minute.
All the time.
What the heck is this?
Like, yeah, all the time. I look at stuff and I was like, that shouldn't go there. Why is this with that mineral? Why does this look that way? And and I'm constantly just like, whoa. And I love that though, because that's the nature of science, is because there's constant learning. There's scientific theory. We're always studying. We're always getting to that next point. And if you lose sight of that, you're not really doing a good enough job.
Yeah.
Because you don't know everything. Just, I'm not Neil deGrasse Tyson, which I think that guy really does know everything. But I'm not that person. And so if there's something I don't know, I'll figure it out. I'll research it. I'll look through books and study. But for the most part, I specialize in mineral identification, mineral assemblages, and economic geology. So
This is what I was just going to ask you. What is an economic geologist?
It's where you study the mineral assemblages that are money-making minerals. So things like gold, silver, copper, the economics of geology. So just the minerals that are going to make you money, basically.
So if you, so to speak, strike gold, do they offer you a percentage at times? If you should really, strike a gold mine, so to speak.
Well, usually like going into something like that, you contract out, like if you are just studying the area, you just get like a flat fee. If you're helping cultivate the whole process, then if something happens, then it's usually split between the members that are there. You take a percentage of whatever you hit.
Yes.
And sometimes it's really cool and sometimes it's nothing. But going into it, if I've studied an area, the only way I'm going to go into like a partnership with somebody is if I know I'm going to get something on that other end. Otherwise, no. But that's why they bring me out there. I have a lot of repeat customers that are like, oh, you helped us follow this area. Will you come map it over here? Because mapping is also a very big part of geology. You have to be able to follow those minerals through structure, through rock type, and then hopefully come out with something on the other end.
So when it comes like in the field, I mean, like, look at this, like on the last exploration we just got done doing, what is like, besides the archaeological dig at the Roswell incident site, right? What has been probably one of the most odd cases that you were asked to come out to investigate on as a geologist? Bizarre, odd, like, well, this is weird. I don't know why you'd ask me to come and investigate this, but I'll see what I can do with what I know.
So I would say I get very interesting mineral questions to come out and ask if this certain thing should be like on their land or on their property. But I have had somebody that reached out to me to ask me why their property was flooding. And because, geologists seem to know a little bit about, the structures, faults, that kind of thing. And yeah, I've done some hydrogeology before in the mine, but I couldn't tell this guy why he had a pond on his property. But he seemed to think that because I was a geologist and I knew the land, he's like, oh, you're a geologist. Can I ask you why I have a pond on my property? Yeah. And like legit, like I was like, well, why, for starters? And he says, well, actually, I need a geologist to sign off on my paperwork that says that it's okay for me to build next to this area. And I'm like, I don't think that I'm the person to do that.
Yeah.
But he's like, well, the earth and the land. And I was like, this is true, but I have no idea why you have this aquifer that just started to create a pond on your land. And I said, I can't personally like put my signature on those papers to say that you could turn that into the state to build there. And he got all flustered and pissed off. And I'm like, I'm sorry, my expertise is only limited. And that's definitely beyond my limits.
Yeah, for sure.
So earlier when you were talking about like with precious metals, that there may be a contractual arrangement that you'd get a percentage should something be found. And we had that dilemma, albeit without precious metals involved, but with the Roswell debris field. And the fact that it happens to be located on government conservation property, Bureau of Land Management, BOM. So we had to strike a deal with them.
Oh, you did?
The idea that should we find anything, that we had to come to a mutual agreement where it would be then displayed, where it would be accessible to the public, that type of thing. And so just imagine we would find something truly extraordinary, and under all types of forms of laboratory analysis, it proved to be something unconventional.
Yeah.
Something not as a registered alloy here on planet Earth. And the point being that if it's the genuine article, it's worth more than $1 million. It's worth more than $1 billion, because there's nothing, it's unique. It's unique to the entire world. And it happens to be from another world nonetheless. And so we then had to come up with an agreement between all the participants that they either would sign off, that they would not make a claim for a percentage, or that there would be a sharing at some point. So we've always tried to project and anticipate what if. The same thing, should we find something? So I would imagine that you have been on projects that has it created a level of suspicion, that you should find something and maybe you'll walk off with it and you won't say a word to anyone else? Or do you find that there are times that there's security that are just monitoring your involvement? Or have you even been questioned after the fact, like you're back at the hotel and they're looking at you kind of squinty-eyed? Well, are you sure you didn't find anything? You're not telling us about everything? So do you feel that there are people watching at times that has made it awkward, made it uncomfortable for you?
Oh yeah, I've been called out to a couple different gold mines where they've discovered not just gold but other metals, and I'm actually in the process of still studying what exactly they are and getting them tested. But as soon as we started to figure them out, like people had a bunch of like skeptical questions about what they were and why, and the assemblage shouldn't have been found with gold where we found it, and it was just fully bizarre. And at first we thought it was like car parts or like things that had been like reburnt and then ground up and then like sprinkled almost over everything. But the neighboring claims were trying to figure out what exactly it was that we were doing, why we had so many people out where we were at, what we were trying to study. And then somebody kind of got wind that it might be something extremely expensive and rare. And so of course people started to jump over on this person's claim. I didn't personally get like any like horrible like threatening questions or anything, but the person that was out there like guarding the claim, they had to have people out there 24/7 to make sure that no one was doing anything.
Right.
Making sure that the area that we're looking in wasn't the area that we were looking in. And so we'd have to skirt around to different places and just make sure that we weren't like seen at a specific spot for too terrible long, or even talking in that location for too terrible long. And I know that sounds like crazy, but it got intense, at least for us. And now that most of the mapping's been done, but still there's a little bit more that needs to travel on to see where else this might propagate. We kind of had to take a step back just because of the heat, like literal the pressure from the outsiders and the people and the wondering what we were doing. And I cannot say like what it is, and I'm so sorry for that, but the level of scrutiny that you got was kind of scary. It's like, well, it was intense and it was very uncomfortable at the time. And I mean, it wasn't a thing that they were scared that I was going to take anything home. In fact, the person gave me a vial of the stuff so that I could continue to study it and look at it and do different things, which was awesome. But I was like, geez, I hope no one knows that I have some of this so that they don't come after me, because it was freaking me out. But
or that somebody could plant something on you only to incriminate you or get you in trouble afterwards, right?
When people used to do that at different like mines that I would work at, they would intentionally put stuff in people's vehicles to make security stop them and to go look at them. So you never wanted to like piss off the wrong person, because
Right.
some of the mines you go to, like, yeah, they're publicly traded, they're big corporations, but the things that happens inside the buildings and the plans that you deal with and all of the files and all of the stuff that you're looking at, it's under a lot of scrutiny. And you're constantly having somebody tapped into your computer or watching over your back, or the cameras that are hidden anywhere at the site at the time. That's where it got really creepy. And I never wanted anybody to like dislike me
Right.
to a point where they're going to go, oh, you know what? She's going to go down because we're going to put this in her car. And we're just talking
Right.
about minerals, but they get really scary over them. I mean, you know, a big enough chunk of gold's worth a lot of money, or some other rare metal that you're talking about, you're caught with that, you're in deep trouble. And so I can understand like people leaving a site like the debris field. You know, what if somebody just was dishonest and stuffed something in their pocket instead
Right.
of like going, hey, this is what I found. And there's that level of, you have to trust the group you're with, and hopefully you know, some other weirdo doesn't come in, or and I know that sounds like really mean to say, but it's the truth. Like, you have those dishonest people going, oh, I'm going to keep everything that I found to myself. I hate working with people like that, because they're like the gatekeepers of whatever they're doing. And it's like, but sharing knowledge and sharing findings is for the greater good of the whole area. It's not like you can blast it to the public, but you share it with your group, and then the group decides what they're going to do with it from there.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I
And
agree
that
with
would be the ideal situation, as opposed to a condition of gold fever where everyone is hoarding and
Oh, yeah.
preventing everyone else from, you know, participating
Mhm.
as far as in sharing the wealth, so to speak.
Oh yeah, for sure.
Well, minerals and metals, that's like big business. So, you know, I mean, that's such
Yeah.
a large business and such a large practice that I can see why. I mean, you do have to have a trusted team, and that runs even in the field. In
Mhm.
any field I think you're in, if you're working or investigating anything, you have to have a trusted, tight team.
Yeah.
Everyone's vetted. We all know we have each other's back if that stuff is found. I mean, you know, it's so important to make sure that you're protected, especially if you're being watched.
Oh, and I've worked with those people that, you know, you're scared to death to say anything to them or to include them in an area, but yet they kind of have to still be in the loop just because they're part of the team. But you and your team decide to leave them out when it comes to something super important. And people get crazy over gold. Like they really do. And in some of the stuff that I've, you know, witnessed, like claim jumping is a big no-no. You'll get your ass shot. Like
Yes.
there is no joke. And some people will stake up and, you know, camp and hide themselves in these claims. I mean, I've gone and found people on people's claims, and it's, thank goodness I wasn't the one in the tent or the one that was trespassing, because holy crap, everything that went down, you're like, oh, I'm so glad I'm a bystander, but I'm the one that caught them. So I had
Yes.
to go with the claim owner to go get rid of them. But it's, you know, once you start involving that kind of a thing, and you start to realize or re-realize just how dishonest people can be, and it sucks.
And
Yeah.
for being in a profession, that would be enough and more than for most individuals. You have an extensive background in acting and in theater
Mhm.
and in music.
Mhm.
And what got you into acting to begin? Was it being a stunt double, that you actually did stunt work on movie sets?
Well, I can do a lot of horse stunt work, as
Right.
well as just anything else. Actually, the theater got me into stunt work because I could fall down pretty easily and not hurt myself. I know that sounds really horrible.
You're very athletic. You have a background in athletics. And like Britt, you also are a professional scuba diver,
Yeah.
correct?
Yeah, so I just love doing everything. I've never wanted to lock myself in a box of any kind. And so I started out in the theater, loving the stage, just realizing that even if I had to read off of a script when I was a kid, if I was reading off of that script, everybody was paying attention to what I was doing. So I could make people laugh, I can make them angry, I can make them cry. So knowing young that you could invoke those emotions in people with your
You have
words,
that talent. Yes.
I was like, this is so cool. And so, yeah, I
Oh,
was
yeah,
like,
absolutely.
let's do it. So I started singing into all of that and dancing and adding that all in, and kind of one thing led to the next. And
So what would you say was your favorite play? Did you have a lead in any of your stage work?
I had tons of leads, but
Wonderful.
one of my favorite plays, actually, I think because the group of people that did it was one of the last ones that I did, but it was called The Curious Savage, and it was just a beautiful play. And I mean, at the end, like the entire audience was crying because of all of the stuff that was going on, and I loved it. But I mean, I've played, I loved playing Cats. I did that, back in the early 2000s, and I was bomb ballerina. I loved it because I loved the theme song, or my song McCavity that I got to sing. And of course I loved dressing up as a cat. It's kind of my persona. It was good to go.
Yes.
But I also got to play
your modeling, your fashion work. Right.
Yeah, being a cat.
So do you prefer musicals or drama?
Oh, I would say probably no, I don't know. I can't just pick one, because I love doing things like Sweeney Todd and Cinderella and Oliver, and then it just so many other like unnamed plays. Yeah, they were so much fun and such a great thing. I mean, like now I'm like losing the names of a bunch of them I've been in, but Jekyll and Hyde. Like I absolutely love that, because I love
Jekyll and Hyde.
Mm-hmm.
One of my favorite.
It was awesome.
I love it. The music is gorgeous.
Yeah. And the Facade is still one of my like favorite songs to sing with the group, and it was awesome.
Did you there's the one number in Jekyll and Hyde called Bring On the Girls, and so all the prostitutes, because the character Hyde is frequenting the prostitutes within the city, and so bring on the girls.
Yes. No, there were a lot of awesome songs. So I love the theater. I love that kind of thing. Like opening night is still one of like the best experiences ever. And and closing is probably one of the saddest but most exhilarating. And it's where you can have the most fun. You've already done all the work. You already know exactly what you're doing. So now go make a real fool of yourself and see how many times you can mess up and see if the audience notices. At least that's what some of our theater groups used to do. But it was all in good fun. It was great. And you meet some of the most amazing people that, they're fantastic. And so like
friends for life. Yeah.
Yeah. And like a lot of life happened for me. And so going to college, I had to really shift gears, and I wasn't going to be a 5-year student. I didn't even want to be a 4-year student. I graduated in 3.5 years. I never left like my room. I was always studying, but I tried to be at the top of my class for most things. But it was really, I'd say, difficult, but I was in every geology club possible in the school. I was in the mining team as well. So they have the intercollegiate mining games. And that was a blast. You do old time like mining things. I've never had more bruises on myself in my life. And it was just all because we're having a great time. So, you
didn't have any bruises after our own dig, our recent dig.
No bruises from that one at all. No, not at all.
I was the one who was running around trying to break an ankle at every turn, but and if people would pick me up, maybe I'd be a little less.
Oh my gosh! Stop whining.
Okay, I'll stop whining.
That is quite an extensive background. That's awesome.
Thank you.
And you've done movies, you've done westerns, and so did you go from theater to motion pictures or vice versa?
Yeah, I went from theater to film, and I was a background. The first time I ever did a background anything was in the movie Conversations with God, and it was being filmed in Ashland, Oregon. And one of the people that I was starting to do indie films with said, you should go and just show up. This will be fun for you. I was like, yeah, okay, I could do that. And I didn't really know what was going on. Oh my gosh, I thought it was the best thing ever. I thought it was so cool. And they're like, well, we're going to bump you up and we're going to have you be the driver that gets the guy in the car accident. And I was like, whoa. I was like, okay, sounds good. So, I think they actually ended up scrapping the scene, but I did all of the stuff and I loved it. And I found it was completely different from theater whatsoever. But I was like, I could mix this and keep doing it. And so I was auditioning for short films and like little horror movies that people were putting on. And, it's definitely like a hard road to go down, but it's just as strong a passion for me as minerals. I mean, I'm the person that's really horrible with names. I remember people's faces. But there are so many awesome like scenes and people and directors that I want to work with throughout just my time and whatnot. So I'm excited about that, and I can't wait. So, we'll see what the future holds.
That's awesome. I have my closing question for you.
Yes.
Being that we are No Earthly Explanation,
Mm-hmm.
and being that I think we discussed it briefly, but I wanted to know more. Like, have you ever had a odd paranormal experience in your life?
I've had several.
What's one that you would want to share?
In Oregon, people oftentimes talk about Bigfoot, right?
Yeah.
And,
yeah, for sure.
And they have like a little even museum about people's and the footprints that people cast and whatnot. So me and my mom would always go horseback riding in the property that was BLM right next to her property. And we'd just take off and we'd go. And we would see bear, we'd see cattle, we'd get freaked out. We'd be gone for, a couple hours at a time. Well, we're coming back on the road and we hear some rustling in the bushes. And my mom's like, oh, I bet that mama bear's back, because you could see like baby footprints in the road. We're like, well, let's get home so that we don't have to deal with this. Because we've been chased by cougars, bears, all kinds of stuff on horseback. It's not fun. So we didn't want to deal with that. It was getting more evening. And me and my mom look up and the bushes start to move. I was like, oh crap, she's going to be like right in front of us. All of a sudden, like everything went dead silent. There was no bird sounds. There were no bugs. The horses just stopped, like froze. There was no noise whatsoever. It seemed like even the wind stopped. And over by the big old pine tree, the bushes started to rustle again. And this big figure stood up. And we're like, oh, it is a bear. And then it stood all the way up. And I mean, we're on horses that are probably 16 hands for people that know, what that height is. And it was taller than what we could look up at. Like we were looking up going, oh crap. And it sat there for just a second, and it kind of just rolled its shoulders a little bit. He looked at us, or she, whatever, and turned around and walked away. No malice, no harm, nothing. I mean, it was extremely large face, a very, very furry on the face. It seemed to have kind of almost a small protruding mouth. You couldn't really make out lips, but sort of really, really big eyes. Very, very broad shoulders, kind of like sandy to dark brown. Like we thought it was a brown bear. And it turned away and it stepped kind of like back down in the bushes, and the bushes moved, and all of a sudden it was gone. And I mean, we're talking like bushes in Oregon are huge. We're not talking about small little things. The brush out there is giant. And so we were like, oh my gosh, we need to go get our dad. Like I looked at my mom. I was like, you saw that, right? She's like, oh yeah, I saw that. I said, was that Bigfoot? She's all like, yeah, I think so. Because it freaking wasn't a bear, and it wasn't some person out there. We were the only ones that were out there. So we went and got my dad. We come back. We're like, you got to look at this. Like, it's pretty much dark right now. We're out there in the truck with flashlights. Can't see anything. So we're like, crap. So we leave, we sleep, we get on horseback that next afternoon, and we go walking out on the road, and we're like, let's try to see it again. We saw 2 perfect footprints across the road. So we stopped there. My mom went back and got my dad. We got the camera. We took pictures of him. We put like our water bottle next to it to see like how big it was. And we're like, this is freaking cool. Like it was really awesome. And it wasn't like we would take our camera out with us when we saw, the Bigfoot, and we didn't have any cell phone that was going to do it a bit of good. I still had like a funky flip phone at the time that had like a 2 megapixel camera on it. You could see like that there was green stuff out there. That was all it would like actually see, but it was awesome. And so my mom and I had 2 other sightings besides that one, and it was fantastic.
My God, I think Britt's going to want to speak with you, personally, because you and your mother, you're firsthand witness on a number of occasions.
Oh yeah, it was awesome. And a lot of people don't believe us, so we're like, whatever. If you don't believe in Bigfoot, like screw you.
We'll believe you.
It was really cool.
Yeah.
I mean, it wasn't a bear. It wasn't a person dressed up in a suit. I mean, I could
How
draw
did
a
the-
detailed picture of it.
How did the horses react?
They didn't move. They just like froze. And
Mhm.
completely, like, everything around us froze. That was just it. It wasn't just them.
Silent. Yeah.
Yeah, everything was silent. And the only time we'd really experienced that before is when a cougar jumped out of the bushes at us. Like, everything went dead silent because there was a big predator there that nothing kind of, and it was just a really creepy but really cool experience. And I've only seen him in Oregon.
Speaking of cougar, the ranch owner where we were a few weeks ago said that there were cougars in that area just days before. So I didn't want to mention it. Didn't want to mention it till after. So, but
Oh, so that was good. You running by yourself through
Yeah.
the
where,
without letting us know. Yeah, that was a great idea, Don.
This is why you
People
needed to get in the
driving
trunk of
by
the
me.
car.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
That's
Long
a
walk
very
back,
cool
I
encounter.
know.
That was
It
a
was
very,
neat.
that's a cool encounter.
But-
It's interesting
but
because
speaking of
go ahead, Don.
But speaking of cougars, you have something else very much in common with Britt, in that you are not only into exotic animals, but you've raised a couple dozen tigers
Mhm.
in recent years.
Well, from
That's hardly what a geologist would do. So how did you get involved with that?
well, my parents owned a rescue facility kind of when I was a kid, and they
Wow.
still own it. But when I was a teen, I think I started raising my first cubs when I was 13. I had my own baby cougar and a lion, and I'd take them on a leash and I'd walk them around the pond. Like, I'm not even kidding. It was awesome. It was really fun. And that was in Idaho. And I used to scare the crap out of my wolf because I also had one of those. I had many animals growing up. And so with that came breeding programs and sending cats out of the country so that you don't over dilute or create inbreeding. And so you send cats to different parts of the world, and my parents were part of that, and they sent cats everywhere. And so you'd have a breeding program, cubs would come. Most of the moms in captivity, tigers, they don't want to raise their own cubs. They're scared of them or they want to eat them. So you take them when they're just a day old and you feed them, and you are mom for 3 months. And it's like, oh my gosh. And so I honestly, like, all in all, I've probably raised 50 cubs, and then just tigers and lions. And that doesn't include the other little critters that came with it.
You and Britt are kindred spirits. I mean, you'll have to talk about that too, because I think aside from your children, Britt, that's your second love, right?
Yeah, large cats.
You know,
Yeah.
Yeah.
Always have been. Yeah. Worked in the animal life my whole
Would have never known it for being out in the desert a couple weeks ago. I mean, for being as isolated and in such a desolate area. And that's why I didn't want to mention anything about any wild cats in the area, because then you too might have been off searching for something else. So
you don't mess with a baby cougar. That thing will claw the crap out of you. They're all business. The rattlesnakes were bad enough.
Well,
yeah,
that's true. And they had just shot one just the day before, downside from where we were. But when we've had cougars in the area, when they find like deer about 15 feet carcasses up in a tree, you know you have a cougar in the area. Or the hind quarter of a horse was clawed out on one of the ranches down the road from here. And you know right away, we got a cougar. Yeah, we got a cougar. So.
Holy crap.
Elley, we are going to have to do this again because we have barely scratched the surface.
we need a part two. Part two, Don.
I'm down. Thank you guys for having me on. I so appreciate it.
It was great having you on. You definitely need to come back on again. I mean, do you have, I will say, as we do our wrap up here, if you have social accounts or ways for people to connect with you, or if you have anything coming up in recent time that you want to promote, go ahead and do so now, my dear.
So anybody can find me at Elley Ringo or at Elley Knows Rocks. Those are my accounts on every form of social media. if you guys can follow my YouTube at Elley Knows Rocks, that's where I post all of my stuff. All the cool things go up there. And as far as big events, I got a big movie that I'll be starting to film in September that I'm excited about. The movie is called Alibi. It's been the 3 years in the making of us starting and making it, so that'll be fun.
Woo!
Well, maybe we'll come and interview on the set, and we'll act like just classic, fans, the groupies that are following you around, and
With signs.
we'll just. And then, okay, move on. Who's next? No, I don't sign autographs. Okay.
I don't know those guys. They might leave me in a desert somewhere.
Well, yes, I can relate.
Well, on that note, we have come to another end of another one of our episodes here on No Earthly Explanation.
It's over? We're done?
Yes.
Where did it go? I can't believe it.
The time flew by. It's when you have good guests, Don. It's when you have good guests. What are you supposed to do, man?
Britt, were you here tonight? I didn't know you were. Oh,
yeah.
Oh,
wow. Wow. Yeah, did you hear that? I'm glad Ellie's still on this call, because let me tell you something. Those are harsh words. This is what I deal with.
I can't help it being in the same Zoom meeting as far as with two beautiful women, and that they are so experienced. They have such backgrounds that I'm just awestruck. I'm just, so I can understand being left on the side of the trail, that I didn't come up to your expectations, but I'm working on it. Okay, ladies, I'll be, I'm very humble though too. So.
Oh, Don, whatever. My goodness,
you guys are awesome.
Thank you, Elley. So again, as I always say at the end of every episode, if you love us, please follow us and listen to us on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, iHeartRadio, Amazon Music, Google Podcasts, Stitcher, Pocket Cast, everywhere you like to listen to your podcast, wherever, when, and where. Doesn't matter. You can pick us up anywhere you'd like. If you'd like to send us an email with any kind of questions or maybe guests you'd like to have us on the show, to have on our show as guests, send it over to noearthlyexplanation@gmail.com. You can follow us on Facebook and Instagram at noearthlyexplanation. You can also talk to your host, Don, and myself on Facebook or on Instagram. Mine is Brit_investigates on Instagram, Britt Barbieri on Facebook. You can find Don on Facebook at Donald Raymond Schmidt. That is with an RAYMOND. That's on Facebook. Instagram, you will find him at Don47Tom. And for those of you that want to send us fan mail, it all goes to noearthlyexplanation@gmail.com. So thanks again, Don, for another incredible episode with our wonderful guest.
And whoever keeps asking me to stay home, I'm going to find you. I'll pay you a visit.
Stay
it's
home.
Not you, Britt, is it? It's not
no,
you, Britt.
Sir. No, sir. No. No.
After tonight, it may be two of you. So
no, sir, that is not me.
Get a job, Don. Do something more, realistic. No, I love it.
You're hilarious.
It was a great show.
Great shows, all
Elley, again, Britt, you stay well. And again, my saucer's double parked, so I need to take off for the next show.
That sounds good, my friend. I'm out of here as well. Until next week, or next 2 weeks, excuse me. Be safe, everyone, and have a wonderful evening, day, whatever time you're listening to us on.
Goodbye, all. Come join us again. Thank you.
A quest is a search for something. And every week, the Quest podcast will show you how we know what we know through interviews with people that have incredible stories of dedication and perseverance. I'm your host, Todd Fisher. Join me in this thought-provoking and inspiring podcast of discovery. Find us anywhere you listen to podcasts. Thank you for listening to this podcast. Please be sure to rate and review this episode. This podcast is produced by Todd Fisher and Anthony Smith and is distributed by Metacortex Publishing. This podcast is copyright. Any previously trademarked or copyright content is used by permission. Information and opinions stated in this podcast should not be construed as medical advice. Please be sure and visit the official website for Metacortex Publishing at metacortexpublishing.com or find us on social media for other unique content.